Sewing is a very entertaining activity apart from useful. It's very useful to sew even if you only sew to mend and to do some alterations. But it is true that it has so many steps. You have to follow steps, and if you're not careful you can end up like a headless chicken going round in circles with a proper pattern to follow. So there are some tips to help you sew more efficiently. While I'm here talking, try to think about the things you do to sew more efficiently and leave them down in the comments so everyone can make use of them and become a better and more efficient sewer. And of course, the first and more obvious one is to clean your mess after you finish a project. This is really annoying. When you finish a project, you just want to get out of the sewing room, show your project, or even finish ironing it, to wear it, or whatever. But it is true that the sewing room can be a pit. Pieces of fabric on the floor, threads, pins everywhere, the rulers, ribbon you have used, everything is everywhere and it is a mess. It clutters your mind, and when you get in the next time you have to clear up before starting, which is quite off-putting. So the best thing to do, even though you don't fancy it, you don't feel like it, is to pick up everything, to sweep a little bit all the threads, in case of course there's a pin on the floor and you stub yourself on your toe. So best thing to clean up after your mess. Cleaning your sewing machine. This is so important and is part of good habits in the sewing room, of course, but it makes such a difference. When your thread goes all the way through the sewing machine, it leaves lint behind, and this accumulates and it makes the sewing machine not run properly and not sew properly. So it makes such a difference when you have a cleaning machine, because your thread and your stitches look nice and neat. So depending on how often you use it, you can clean it once a week or once a month, but it makes such a difference. I really recommend doing it. This one might seem a bit over the top, but it's helping me a lot and I'm finding it really useful, and it is to leave everything ready for my next project. Because the way I'm sewing and the filming of the videos, I know what I'm going to do next. So what I'm doing is that I'm leaving everything ready. If I'm going to use bias tape, I leave it on the table. If I'm going to use a certain thread, I leave it in the bobbin already threaded, and the machine as well. And this really helps me, because if not, if I get to the sewing machine and I start looking for everything and getting everything ready, that half an hour, it's a mess. It's just a waste of time. So leaving everything ready and by hand, even the needle I'm going to use, it's really useful. It's a really useful tip for me, at least it's working for me. I used to laugh at people that used to have everything ready a week before Christmas, but maybe it's age. I'm becoming a bit more like that. Planning ahead, this is a huge must. From washing your fabric the minute I get in the house to buying the zipper or the thread you know you're going to need, planning ahead is basic to be organized, because if you get in the sewing room, you want to have everything and start your project and finish it. It's a mess when you have to leave something in the middle and rush to the haberdashery to get something you didn't think about. So this is just basic, just plan ahead. One thing that might seem a bit over the top, but it works for me, is doing some inventory, or just even buy some extra bits that you know you're going to use. There are things that you run out of even without realizing, things like interfacing, basting thread, tissue paper, all of those you're using constantly and you don't realize when you have to get some more. So it's good to have a few extras like zippers and invisible zippers in basic colors that you know you're going to use even for some alterations. There's nothing worse than coming to the sewing room to do something and realizing you don't have something you're going to need and getting your pile of projects all the way to the ceiling. So you better have some extras. There's no harm in that. When you finally sit in front of the sewing machine, you don't want to stop, and there's nothing worse than having a very long seam ahead and your bobbin running out of thread. So my tip would be to have a few extra bobbins in basic colors. Blacks and whites are always going to be useful on the inside of your garment, so there's no harm on having a few extra ones. So take that into account. Trying to do the same thing all at once. That's really obvious. You're going to say, of course, Irene, this is really obvious. We already do that. And it's really easy to do it at first. I mean, you cut all your material at first, all at once. And then you serge it, you overlock it if it's needed, all at once. But then when you start following the steps of your pattern, it's a bit more difficult to do it efficiently because they don't do things all at once, like pressing your seams all at once or sewing stuff together. For example, if you're going to make some straps and you need to hem your dress 5 steps ahead, you can press your seams all at once to make the most of your iron, so you don't start plugging and unplugging your iron all the time, and then sew everything together so you sit once. These skipping steps, not skipping, but mixing stuff, it's really useful and it makes you sew a bit more efficiently and fast. And one very logical thing to do is to batch sew when you're going to make a few of the same. When I made the sheer dresses, I batch sew. I did all the gathering first, then all the hems, all the straps by categories. That makes you sew much quicker and much more efficiently. And it's better for your mind, because if you think, oh, I still have 3 to go, I still have 2 to go, it's very sad. Of course, not everyone's going to make 3 dresses in a row, but you can make, for example, cushions. If you're going to make 4 cushions, don't finish one to start the next. Just cut them all, serge them all, and then sew them together by categories. So all the contour sides together, and then put all the zips in. So it's much more efficiently and a happier sewing. One thing I really like about the serger is that you overlock everything without cutting the thread. So you can feed your machine a few pieces of material one after the other, and later you cut the in-between. So I've started to do that with my regular sewing machine and it's working fine. What I do is that I leave some space, some room for the next one. And of course I go back and forth to make sure the seam is secure, but it's working fine and it's sparing me a few minutes of my time. So that's quite good as well. And these are the things I've been doing lately to make my life a bit easier in the sewing room and to sew a bit more efficiently. Of course, I'm sure there are 1,000 more, and if you know a few of them, leave them down in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe if you're new around here. I would really appreciate it. It helps the channel a lot, and that way you don't miss anything, because I upload a video once a week. And I leave you 2 links anyways, one to good habits in the sewing room, and the other one for, what was it? Obvious tips in the sewing room. Bye!